Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you today, here live. Sometimes things happen. We're so busy, but since we are starting the Hispanic Heritage Month, I wanted to take a moment to discuss some of the opportunities that are available because the Hispanic market is booming, but not everyone understands what it entails. So today, I want to give you, before we go into the presentation and the introduction, and before we start talking a little bit more about it, I want to tell you a little bit about why you should stay with us today. Because we are going to discuss untapped opportunities. If you are a business owner, there are untapped opportunities for you in the Hispanic market. If you are a brand, there are untapped opportunities for you. And maybe you're thinking, shall I go with English, Spanish, Spanglish? Shall I segment because of different heritage, generation? We're going to talk about all of that. But also, if you are an employee or if you're a corporate leader, we are going to talk about how you can break barriers by embracing your Hispanidad, all of who you are, as an advantage. And if you are a leader and an ally, we are going to discuss also how you can drive diversity and inclusion in your organization. And why are we going to do that today? Because I have an expert in the field. And it's a friend, but it's also the author of this amazing book that I recommend to all of you, Hispanic Market Power, America's Business Growth Engine. It's the president of Alma Advertising. It's also a friend, and it's today with us. Let me welcome Isaac Mizrahi. Bienvenido.
Hola, estimada. Hi, Gaby. Great to be here. It's a pleasure. Thanks for the invitation. Looking forward to this great conversation.
Same here. I'm just going to give people a little bit of background of this. Isaac and I have worked together in different partners for different campaigns in the past. I think 10 years maybe. Are we getting that old? Yes?
We are. Not you, but me for sure.
Yes, we are. And this is a partnership and a friendship that has survived not just working together, but also we work together in campaigns around music and entertainment, and we work together in campaigns around sports and the World Cup. And me being from Argentina and him being from Brazil, that means a lot, right?
Don't go there.
Fantastic. So, Isaac, thank you so much for joining me today. And I want to start talking about your approach for this book, because it's a very pragmatic approach. And the first thing that you state loud and clear is that the demographic shift is not about who you support in politics or where you stand or what is your political party or how you see things, that this shift and this opportunity is available, and it is about facts, not politics. Why did you decide to start the book setting the tone with that?
Well, first of all, because we live in a very divisive society. I don't need to tell you that. We all know this. A lot of topics, they have been politicized. There is the one side, there is the other side. And I really didn't want this to be a politicized issue, because for me, there are several dimensions of the discussion of Hispanics in America, and all of them very, very worthwhile to discuss, including social justice and immigration and other things. But my focus on this book is about business. That's my background. I'm an economist. I have a master's degree in business administration. I've been here for 24 years, working in the corporate side and in the agency side. And this unique perspective in these 25 years gave me some insights about how to effectively work with the Hispanic segment to drive business. And so I wanted to have this book about driving growth.
Let's take a moment then to introduce yourself, because I've known you, many of the people in the industry know you, but many of maybe tuning in for the first time. So please take a minute to introduce yourself, because you've been in the brand side and in the agency side, among other things.
Yes. Well, first of all, people should know that I'm not a fashion designer, right? So that's the first thing that people should know. And even though I may not look Latino, my name is not very Latino, but I'm Latino, born and raised in Brazil, in beautiful Rio de Janeiro. As I said, I have a business background. I started my career in the corporate side, came to the US as an immigrant almost 25 years ago. And I work with corporations like Coca-Cola, Bell South, Nextel, Sprint. And most of these 25 years in the US, I've been doing Hispanic marketing, multicultural marketing, leading multicultural marketing efforts. 14 years ago, I transitioned to the agency side. Currently, I'm the CEO of Alma Advertising. Alma is one of the leading agencies in America, not only multicultural agencies, leading agencies overall. And at Alma, I had the opportunity to work with several clients. I did a calculation, Gaby, for the book. In between my corporate time and the time of Alma, directly or indirectly, I touched approximately more than 100 different brands,
Oh,
different
wow.
sizes brands, different stages, challenging brands, leading brands. And this collective experience in both sides, on the client side and the agency side, made me start writing about what I saw as opportunities. And these writings became articles on Forbes. I write a monthly column on Forbes.com for the past 6 years about multicultural marketing. And these articles became the seed for the book. 3 years ago, I decided to put together this book. It's a reference book. This is not a linear book, but it's a book that goes beyond the opportunity. A lot of people talk about the opportunity. 62 million Hispanics, 19% of the population. However, the hard part is not to identify the opportunity nowadays in 2023. The hard part is how to move from the opportunity into action. That's where most advertisers, most marketers, they struggle. And I wanted the book to be a testimonial of my opportunity, my experience at the client, with my clients at the agency, to help them to achieve growth.
Absolutely. And as I'm seeing, Isaac, the comments coming in, I'm going to be sharing them with them. And I want people to know that Isaac is going to be answering questions at the end of this session. So keep that love coming, keep your comments, keep your questions coming. But the first thing that I want to start is, I always say, we can discuss all day about the nature of this pen, but if I drop it, it's going to go down. And I feel like the Hispanic market discussion and the multicultural discussion is about the same thing. We can discuss all day about the nature of it, but it's happening. And the trends that are in place are not going to change. So I want you to start by sharing with the people, and you've done this amazingly in your book, what are the trends that are in place and why those trends are not going to be reverted?
That's a great beginning, because every time I talk to clients or even prospects, I talk about demographic trends, cultural trends, measurement. And so let's start with the demographic trends. The census, the 2020 census results that were published 2 years ago in 2021 show the Hispanic population at 62 million, 19% of the population. And a lot of people know these headlines. What some people haven't seen is that the overall country population was mostly driven by Hispanics. Hispanics represented 51% of the growth between 2020 and 2010, while the white Caucasian population actually declined in size. And that was significantly surprising, because while some economists and some experts were expecting a deceleration, a slowdown of the white Caucasian population growth, nobody expected a decline. And why this is important, Gaby, is because countries that have experienced decline in population, specifically Japan, some countries in the Western Europe like Italy, they also experience a decline in economic activity. And that's not good news for a country like the US. So 51% of the population growth between 2010 and 2020 came from Hispanics. Besides the sheer size of the population, we have all the demographic trends. Almost $2 trillion in purchasing power, bigger than the GDP of Italy, almost the GDP of India as a country. The geographic variation. Hispanics are extremely concentrated in the Southwest, California, Southwest states, Texas, Florida, Chicago, New York. However, another big aha was the growth of the Hispanic population in less traditional markets. Midwestern states, for instance, South Dakota, North Dakota, Kentucky. So from a demographic standpoint, population, geographical penetration, income, all of these trends are going the right direction and bringing the economy with it. And demographic trends, they don't change depending on the political cycle, depending on who sits in the White House, and they don't change in the short term. So the prediction from the experts, this is not a personal opinion, is that the trends that we saw between 2010 and 2020 are still going to be in place between 2020 and 2030 and beyond. So the question is not whether or not you should accept the demographic trends. The question is, are you going to do something with it? Are you going to prepare your small business, your large business, your new brands, your strategies for the future, your personal strategy as an executive too, to this new demographic reality that we are facing in America? And that's only the demographic angle. Later on, we can talk about the cultural angle, which I know you're very passionate about.
I know, yes. So as we said, we can discuss about this pencil all day, but the fact is, if I drop it, it's gonna go down. So this is the same thing that is happening. The change is coming. The change is already here. And the thing that I loved so much about your book is that it has a very practical approach. So there may be people who are inside organizations and they're working and they see this opportunity, they see the untapped opportunity, the white spaces in their industry, the white spaces in their corporations, but whenever they have to present the case, they don't have the tools. So something that I think is very interesting is that you point out very clear that not doing anything has a cost, because sometimes people say, okay, I'm going to wait until later. Okay, you have to prove it to me. Okay, I'm not too sure, because the resistance is always there for organizations. So what are the tools, especially this tool of opening the dialogue about the cost of what happens if we don't do anything? Tell me about that.
In finance, there's an expression called the cost of opportunity, right? So a lot of times when I speak to prospects or clients, it's very tangible to talk about the cost. If they want to do a marketing program, a campaign, you know that how much is going to media cost, how much the production of the campaign cost, you know how much you're going to pay in research and agency fees. This is tangible, dollar signs. And that's how most of the clients, they operate. They say, you know, I need incremental budgets. I need to figure out, I need to find, quote unquote, the budget. And a lot of companies, you know, they decided not to move forward in that direction, or move forward with a limited amount of support. And when they come to us, and I discuss with them using my background as a former client, I said, but what is the cost of not doing that? Have you measured? Because honestly, Gaby, that's the apples to apples comparison. This is how much your campaign is going to cost, and this is the cost of inaction. And you compare which one is the greater. Because if not doing anything is going to cost you more money, you should be acting. And then let's go specific. How do you at least estimate the cost of doing nothing? So for one client,
I want to stop right here. So step number one is, when we are proposing this or when we're in a meeting, one very practical way of doing things is not just I want to convince you of investing in the Hispanic market or doing business in the Hispanic market, but also I want you to consider the other option. What happens if we don't do it? Now, how do we calculate what is that cost of opportunity you were talking about in simple ways?
In simple ways, most of the companies that are not actively investing in Hispanic marketing, they may not have a high market share. For instance, market share is, you know, your competitive share versus your competition in terms of, you know, how big you are. Give a specific example. Imagine a company that doesn't do Hispanic marketing. They have a market share within Hispanics of 10%. But we already discussed that Hispanics represent 19% of the population. So they are below what we call in business fair share. You know, companies, they should be getting more or less proportionally, at least the proportionally size of the population from Hispanics. If Hispanics represent 19% of the population, you should be getting 19% of your sales from Hispanics. This is a high level number.
What if it's like beauty, where we buy, Latinas, we buy more products, we over-index in that category?
That's even better. I know companies that get 25, 30, 35% of sales on Hispanic. Going back to the example of the company that's not doing anything, 10% is the example that I'm giving. So they have a gap between 10 and 19% to get fair share. These 9 percentage points can be translated into dollars. Most companies know how much 1 percentage point of share represents from a dollar standpoint. And believe me, for national large corporations, we're talking about tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on an annual basis. So in this case, with this specific client, we talked about maybe a $20 million investment versus an $120 million gap that he could close of incremental sales. The numbers are not even close, Gaby. The cost of doing nothing was 6 times in this specific example that I had than the cost of doing something. And again, this is a business decision. You may like Hispanics, not like Hispanics. You may agree with the direction of the demographics. This is money there. Either you take or your competitors are going to take. And that's only one exercise that we do with clients and prospects to help them to understand that inaction has a cost, and this cost can be estimated.
Now, this is on the agency and brand side, but I know we also have people who are inside corporations and that are having this same conversation when it comes to human resources or when it comes to diversity and inclusion initiatives. So in that case, how can they start this conversation around having a workforce and especially a leadership team that resembles the consumers they serve?
Exactly as you said, Gaby, the workforce needs to represent more and more the consumer marketplace, the labor force. So if you're not doing that, you may be missing an opportunity to have a strong connection with your consumers, with your prospects. You may be missing trends, you may be missing opportunities. But you also mentioned something extremely important. It's not only about recruiting at the lower level, it's having the representation at the mid-level, at the C-suite, and at the board of directors. You're very familiar with LCDA. I'm a member of the Latino Corporate Directors Association. And if I'm not mistaken, and there is a chapter in the book about it, the representation of Latinos in boards in America is less than 5% nowadays. And actually the number is not going in the positive direction. So we need to have this discussion, not because we need to have system of quotas. That's a personal opinion. Just because we need to reflect the consumer marketplace. Again, this is a business discussion. We want, like, the cover of my book, the rocket with the dollar sign going up. That's what we want. And in order to be better equipped to understand the demographic changes in America, you have to have internal people that understand that. And, ideally subject matter experts like Alma, like us, and like many great other agencies and consultants, research companies, media companies that exist in this marketplace that can help them to have a finger in the pulse of what's happening in America nowadays.
Now, sometimes people think that multicultural is niche. And you say in your book, stop thinking that multicultural is niche. Why?
Well, first of all, because as I said, the white Caucasian population is declining. If you only rely on this segment to actually get your sales, you're going to get less and less over the years. Second, if you add up the Hispanic segment, the African American segment, and the Asian American Pacific Islander segment, together they already represent close to 40% of the national population. And if you go to specific markets like California, Texas, and Florida, the number is beyond 50%. So this is already the mainstream. It's about time to stop considering multicultural marketing and the Hispanic segment an appendix, an incremental effort that you do if you find the money, if you have the time. There are many, many cases of brands that are leading with Hispanic insights, and they are being very successful over the years. So, even what is considered the mainstream message needs to be more multicultural. And I hope in a few minutes we can talk about one of the biggest debacles or issues in the marketplace, which is this assumption of one size fits all called total market that
Yes.
actually cost lots of millions of dollars to a lot of companies under a misconceived idea.
So let's go there. Let's start getting more tactical, more specific. So let's explain for somebody who is not familiar, who doesn't come from advertising, what is total market. But also, I would like for you to touch upon language, because we had some years ago, even decades ago, everything in Spanish, then English, Spanglish. Now we're seeing interesting changes even in Spanish language networks. So let's talk about total markets, what it is, and what is the role that language plays when we try to talk to Hispanic audiences.
Let's take these two questions. They're very important. Let me start with total market. For those who don't know, total market, if I can summarize, is the idea of one size fits all. You have one message, one communication, one creative idea to all the US population. And the advocates of total market, first of all, they talked about efficiencies and synergies. So it's a financial driven strategy, but also they talked about the fact that the majority of Hispanics in the US were born here, different from 30 years ago that the majority was actually immigrant. So a lot of Hispanics, they are bilingual, bicultural, and a lot of them say, given that they are bilingual and bicultural, they're probably going to be assimilating and acculturating to the Anglo culture. Therefore, we don't need to do anything. They are already exposed. Our media plans reach Hispanics, so we don't need to do anything separate to address this opportunity. And it's a very good speech. A lot of people are saying, yeah, I agree with that, etc.
We're saving money here, maybe.
Yeah. But here's the problem. That's not the reality in real life. That's a very beautiful speech if you are in the C-suite, but this is not the reality. Yes, the majority of Hispanics are born in the US, are bilingual, bicultural, but they are actually increasing their desire to be connected to the Latino, to the Hispanic culture, and they want brands to reflect that Hispanic heritage in their marketing efforts. And this is not only a matter of boomers or Gen Xers, millennials and Generation Z Hispanic consumers expect to be recognized in marketing and advertising as Hispanics, and that brands leverage the Hispanic culture. They expect that. So basically, what we are proposing.
How do they compare with older generations? Because a lot of people from older generations grew up with the advice when they were little kids: don't speak Spanish, I'm not teaching you Spanish, don't speak Spanish in public, which is something that internalized that something about me is wrong, my culture is wrong, or the language that is spoken in so many of our homes is wrong. So how are new generations looking at the world, and what is the perception of their own Hispanidad?
The new generations, they want as much to be recognized and having their culture reflected in marketing campaigns than the older generation. This is data from Nielsen I got from my great friend Stacey de Armas, that probably may be watching this. Recent data from a few days ago, okay? And they compare 2018 and 2023. If I'm not mistaken, this is also We Are All Human. Claudia Edelman, also big saludos for you, that 2018, 2023, the expectations from all generation of Hispanics to have the Hispanic culture reflected in marketing advertising increased, right? And the perception of brand and advertisers doing a great job decreased. Now, let's go to the language topic. This same study, when asked what are the key pillars of Hispanic culture for Hispanic consumers, they talked about 5 key pillars in the last 5 years. They talked about music and entertainment. They talked about food.
And we're going to go there.
They talked about language, go back, family and collectivism, and the association with hard work. Very interesting attribute here. On language, naturally, we have a more bilingual Hispanic community nowadays. What I think people forget is that Reaching Hispanic with general market plans in English is one thing. Connecting with Hispanics is something else. Reaching does not mean connecting. Connecting is an emotional process, speaks to the heart and to the soul. Reaching is an efficiency, media planning, rational process, mechanical process. So a lot of people say, but my media plan is already reaching Hispanics. And my question is, they're reaching Hispanics, but they may not be connecting because we have better data nowadays. We have data from Nielsen, from Cantor, from the ANA SIM, led by Carlos Santiago, Lisette, and Gilbert Davila, that led amazing research that today we know what are the secrets for ROI when it comes to marketing advertising to Hispanics. And the secret passes by authenticity, authentic stories, contextual situations that Hispanics identify themselves, usage of humor and usage of Spanish dialogues, not voiceovers, not VO, real dialogues. Those things make ads in Hispanics to Hispanics have a higher ROI of up to 3 or 4 times higher than translations of general market ads.
I just want to recap because this is very important. Reaching is not the same as connecting, and this applies to everything, whether it is advertising, writing a book, talking to an audience. So the fact that we are included, so what you mentioned that the most successful companies are doing when they are connecting and not just reaching to the Hispanic community, you mentioned humor, you mentioned stories, you mentioned dialogues or at least words in Spanish. What else is it that you see as a commonality in all these brands that really are killing it with Hispanic consumers?
Emotional storytelling, Gabi. You know this. And the interesting thing is that I think we always knew that intuitively. In our gut, we knew that the Hispanics, they respond stronger with emotional storytelling. Now we have data. We have research. This is science. And, that's what made me write this book. This is not an opinion anymore. It's not like, you guys want to talk about this because you want to sell more ads to Hispanic. This is really how companies are succeeding in their marketplace. And I wanted, and I still want, Hispanic marketing to be considered a serious discipline. It's not like, I know a guy that speaks Spanish that can manage my Hispanic marketing for my company. We need to develop the next generation of Hispanic marketers. I speak in high schools. I speak in college about this book because this is the biggest source of growth for American brands and companies for years to come. And we need to treat this with ecosystem of data, research, ROI, professionals, a different level of discipline that we had for the past few years. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have this discussion, and appreciate you opening the mic for this debate.
For a very long time, maybe in the early years of Hispanic advertising, some people from outside the community assume that just because you are Hispanic, you're an expert on Hispanic advertising, and just being Hispanic doesn't make you an expert. As you said, there's science behind it. And I want to since you were explaining how not just to reach, but also to connect, I was wondering if you have noticed any different, or if your research notices any difference between reaching to men and women in the Hispanic community in terms of storytelling.
I think that, there are some difference when it comes to the creative storytelling, the crafting, absolutely. But this, I think, go beyond Hispanic. You have to have the experts that know the codes, right? Because the interesting thing, Gabi, about advertising, and I've learned this from the people that I admire, that I have the opportunity to work with, like my CCO here at Alma, Alvaro Suñol, which is a master of storytelling, is that sometimes the nuances, they speak louder than the straightforward. And I think that's a little bit the secret of the Hispanic effective advertising. Sometimes it's a wink. For instance, we did a McDonald's ad a few years ago that's considered by many one of the best examples of an ad that speaks culturally to the heart and the soul of Hispanics, but also is a great ad for non-Hispanics. It's called First Customer, for those who want to Google on YouTube. And in the first scene is basically the first day of a Latino teenager in the McDonald's store. So he introduces himself as Gabriel to the manager of the store. When the parents come to the drive-thru to be the first customers of that young Gabriel, they call for Gabriel, right? If you and I know that this is a Latino story because
Yes.
I'm Isaac and Isaac, right? And I have a Gabriel at home, and I also have a Patrick, which is Patrick for me, right? So that's the little nuances may be hidden, but a Latino or an immigrant or somebody that has a name that it's hard to pronounce depending on the culture, they understand that. That's the power of storytelling with nuances, with a little wink. And
It's
that's what I think that, it's fascinating in our industry.
it's a story that somehow tells us we know what it feels like, that's what they say. It's a story that can be universal, or it can be not even, as you said, specific just for Latinos, but at some point in that story there's something that tells us we know how it feels like, and
Exactly.
that's what's gonna reach the hearts, right?
That's the authenticity. Authenticity is another great. You mentioned, ask me. I mentioned emotional storytelling, authentic stories. Nothing against mariachis and abuelas. You can have an
The
authentic story with
sombrero, like
mar,
stereotypes.
yeah, but or World Cup. You have the goal. Really, I think that we can do better than that without, and I came from radio broadcasting, so I used to be the goals in Brazil. But the reality is there are beauty in nuances. We need to go to unexpected. The sophistication of the Hispanic consumer, even from an entertaining standpoint, is higher. People can skip advertising very easily nowadays. Let's be very honest, right? So our challenge as creators of storytelling to the Hispanic community is to create ideas that are insightful, they're authentic, they're relevant, that can move people from an emotional standpoint and entertain them too. And I think that's why advertising is so amazing, because it's not only science, but it's also science and art. And some companies do better than others. And, I have to think that the folks here at Alma, they are very good at what they are doing, because the business has been growing. The clients are very happy and very excited to be in this moment with the sheer size of the Hispanic population, but also the level of sophistication that the market brings with it.
Yes, and you're leaving this perfect segue when we talk about entertainment and we talk about the new generation and language, and the segue goes to music and entertainment. How can we explain that we are seeing in the past years big celebrities in the Hispanic world singing in Spanish and going global?
You know what? I know we are live, so this is good.
Benito, Karol
I'm
G.
I'm dropping a Forbes article, ideally today, or if not tomorrow morning, about Peso Pluma and the phenomena of regional Mexican, because for me that's an amazing story too. It goes back to authenticity. Like 25 years ago, and I'm gonna say this in a very respectful way. I love Shakira's music, right? But I'm like Pies Descalzos, the Shakira singing in Spanish. And I understand that, she became mainstream. She started singing in English, Hips Don't Lie, I understand that. Ricky Martin too, moved to the mainstream. What amazing right now is that guys like Bad Bunny, Benito, J Balvin, Rosalia, Peso Pluma, they don't feel that they need to translate their songs and lyrics into English or become more pop, right? It's not only about the language, but it's the style. They just said, I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to be authentic. And, with the trombone in the back, right? In the case of Peso Pluma, you know what? And Peso Pluma was hotter, depending on some statistics, than Taylor Swift in the summer, right?
And even in the Middle East, I was reading the comments in his YouTube account, and it's incredible because it's resonated in areas of the planet where you why, what happened? But it's happening. It's what you say, the emotional connection. And music is a universal language. And many of us, for example, I grew up in Argentina, and we sang for a long time like the songs just because of the sound. We didn't know the lyrics. And I
Yes.
think now the same thing is happening. It's just instead of just guessing in a phonetical way songs in English, we are doing the same in different languages, in this case in Spanish.
Yeah, maybe the whole point of acculturation is the reverse. The white Caucasian America is acculturating to Hispanics through
Uh-huh.
music. Who knows? But the reality is that, Gabi, I think there's something in common on all these cases because we are talking about different styles, right? So it's not like it's reggaeton or whatever. It's authenticity. I think
Hmm.
people are craving authentic stories. They're craving authentic characters, authentic people, and the good thing is that there are a lot of amazing, authentic Hispanic stories to be shared that can go beyond the Hispanic segment.
Mm-hmm. And we're seeing also a revolution in sports. I mean, the MLS, the soccer league. You live in Miami.
Yes.
I saw you there in the pink wave with the Miami Inter and Messi. But I mean, it's not just soccer. The growth of so many other sports here in the United States will come from Hispanics.
And you and I are big football fans, and we know that the World Cup is coming 2026.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be Canada, Mexico, and the US, but mostly in the US. And I think that the MLS is growing. Your friend Leo coming here to the US is amazing, but people forget that's not only him, but Busquets, Jordi Alba, and I
Mm-hmm.
have a feeling that we're going to have others coming to other teams. So I think that 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026 are going to be great years for football in America at the MLS level. National teams, the women's US national team is already an amazing team. I think the men's national team is going to get better, but also the Saturday mornings. I tell people drive around any city in America in Saturday mornings and see what other sports there are people that the kids are playing.
Hmm.
The girls, boys, most of them they're playing soccer,
Hmm.
football. It's a fun sport. And the interesting thing is that I think that you could have been a fan, but there was a limit because you didn't have a strong league or you didn't have idols in your marketplace. And I think that started to change more and more.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very bullish. And besides, I actually was talking to a client in Dallas, the client earlier this week, and they asked me this question. There is another consideration. With all the respect to the NFL and NBA, to my friend Marisa Solis, entering the football is also comparatively less expensive than the big leagues in America. So it's
Hmm.
also an interesting thing that you may spend less in a trendy league or a trendy
When you
sports.
football, you mean football, soccer?
Soccer.
Yes.
So you may spend less because of course this doesn't bring the price tag of an NFL sponsorship or NBA sponsorship, but it's trendy and it's growing in the key pockets of population that the population is growing the most. So I'm very bullish about soccer in America for all these reasons.
I want to ask you one more question before I start reading to you the questions that people are sending, because I want to make sure we have time for those questions as well. Something that for me was, I'm always looking for the untapped opportunity, the white space. And you have a whole chapter dedicated to these opportunities, incredible opportunities hidden in plain sight when it comes to the Hispanic community. So why don't we go through some of them, because some people may be thinking, well, I'm going to launch a new product, or I'm going to think about a new audience, or I am trying to change my strategy in marketing. So which are these markets inside the Hispanic community that people are not paying so much attention, but they have money and they have the numbers?
Yeah, I call this the long tail,
Mm-hmm.
using an expression created by one big author, Mark Christensen. And what is the concept of long tail? Without changing to professor, using the distribution, the long tail is the part of the Hispanic population that doesn't get the attention, right? That still has significant business critical mass. And if I'm not mistaken, I wrote this chapter. This was one of my first articles on Forbes, interesting enough, back in 2016. I was not even a contributor at that time. It was like an ad hoc article that they published. And everybody was surprised. I was surprised too. I think got like 30,000 views in a few weeks. And I updated that information for the book and revised it a little bit. So some opportunities, for instance, Hispanics 55 years old plus, because we know that the Hispanic population is very young. I think the median age is around 30, 34, if I'm not mistaken. However, that doesn't mean that if you are doing business for Hispanics 55 years old plus, if you have products and services, this is not relevant. Another one, Hispanics with household income above $150,000. There's this also perception that Hispanics cannot be advertised luxury brands.
So
right?
affluent, emerging affluence and affluent. Tenemos dinero, señores.
You know, one of us here in this call has. And, you know, the other long tail, less traditional markets, we briefly touched about that. There are markets that the population has been growing. You and I would travel a lot to Kansas City, right, Gaby, when we work with Sprint. I work at Sprint as an agency and as a Sprint employee. You know, the Hispanic population booming in Kansas and Kansas City area. Another one is non-Mexican Hispanics, which gives a good segue if you want to discuss now or later about the idiosyncrasies depending on where you're coming from. In the East Coast, for instance, even though there's a very, very strong presence of Mexican Americans, Mexican descendants as part of the Hispanic population, here in South Florida, traditionally, as people know, the Cuban American population is very strong because of diaspora from Colombia, Venezuela, and Argentina, Brazil. You have a lot of South Americans. There are pockets of Central America. I used to live in DC, El Salvador, Guatemala, Nicaragua, because of initial waves, because of hurricanes that happened in the 80s and 90s in Central America, that this immigration was possible from a visa standpoint. You know, Puerto Ricans in New York, in Orlando. So these are the non-Mexican pockets that I identify in this long tail article.
And the beauty about this long tail is that your message will go further if it's a good fit. Your dollars are going to go further because it's an audience that people are not paying so much attention, or marketers are not paying so much attention. Now, I want to start with one of the questions here that touches on a space that you include in your book, and that has to be with tech and VC money. So Monica Marquez says, what about Latina entrepreneurs? In 2020, research found that Latina-owned businesses made up 18% of all women-owned businesses. However, VC investment remains disproportionately low. This is so frustrating, with Latina entrepreneurs receiving less than 0.32%, not 32%, 0.32% of total VC funding. What are your insights to make a case for VC to invest in Latino, Latina, Hispanic, however you want to call it, business, given the trends? And I know you have information on that as well in the book.
Yes, thank you, Monica, for the question. That's a great question, and you added a lot of interesting data. Hispanics over-index in building small business, even though you said Latina represent 18%, but if you look at the percentage of growth, is driven by minorities and Latinas, not only Hispanics or Latinos, Latinas, the women, they are leading this in our cohort. I think that you know, you and I, we know this, Gaby, but sometimes people forget. We have a couple of characteristics that if I were a VC, I would be very interested to hear from Hispanics and Latinos. And first of all, we are very resilient. Remember that week in Argentina that I think you had 3 or 4 different presidents?
I can show you with a hand. 5 presidents in 10 days. We all remember the helicopter leaving and everything.
When I started my career in Brazil, at one point I was the media manager for a local company. The inflation rate in the country was around 10,000% per year. And last year, people were panicking at 7% in the US per year. And I said, really?
That's
and I'm not
nothing
saying
for
this
us.
to brag, but it's not bragging. It's real data and real stories that make us creative, resilient. We think out of the box because sometimes the box is destroyed. So there is no even box. There is no book to see. Let me see how we did that 10 years ago or 5 years ago. We have to be very innovative by necessity. Not because we read a beautiful book or we
The
got a
need for
big TED.
survival. It's sink or
Yes,
swim, yes.
exactly. So I think that's a kind of a characteristic that I hear a lot from VCs that's very important. Resilience, innovation, thinking out of the box, looking for obstacles and looking for opportunities to overcome these obstacles, because this is the essence of making a new product or service, right? So I think that what I think we need the most right now is mentoring and coaching, right? We need mentoring and coaching for the startups. There's access to capital, and I'm not an expert on VC. This is something that I don't have any problem saying. I'm seeing more movement in Hispanic-led VCs. And I hope this is a trend that's going to stay. But we need both. We need more VCs that are Hispanics, but I don't believe that only Hispanic VCs should invest on Hispanic startups. Fits anyone given the characteristics that I just said.
Absolutely. I have here some questions. There are multiple, so you can answer them all or you can pick and choose in case you have already covered it. It's Ruben Rivera says, I have a couple of questions. One, you mentioned reaching versus connecting. I think we all have this in our toolbox right now, the reaching versus connecting. How do you measure connecting in terms of emotional engagement?
I think there are several research. Hi, Ruben. Thank for the question. Ruben is a very good industry friend. I think that you have research. You have attributes that you do on brand tracking, advertising tracking, and there is a correlation between some of these attributes and purchase consideration. So this is doable. This is not like fluffy.
So this is doable. This is not fluffy. There we go. Everybody wants to reach out to you, Isaac. I don't think we have audio right now, so let me.
But I'm back.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
I'm back. Great. So this is measurable and this is done this way. And I think he has a second question here, right? Tips for executive leadership to invest.
What are the what are tips? Let me read it for everyone who's listening. What are tips to get executive leadership to invest more in the Hispanic market? Most, if not, see the opportunity but lack of action. Again, this thing about not doing things has a cost. This ends up being an endless cycle of not doing anything. How do we break that cycle of inertia, Isaac?
Yes, Ruben, as we discussed, putting together a business case. The example that we discussed, the cost of doing nothing, is probably a chapter in the business case, but we need to do the homework. This is part. So we need to put together the business case to say where you are, where you can be, what is the benefit from a dollar, and how much you're going to be investing. The other thing, Ruben, that's very important is consistency. Hispanic cannot be a pet project for a CMO or somebody that likes it. It needs to be something that at the board level, at the C-suite level, is adopted as a constant. We shouldn't be discussing whether or not we should do Hispanic marketing anymore. Honestly, if you're still discussing this, you're outdated. I'm sorry. It needs to be how we're going to be doing Hispanic marketing. That's the good discussion. How to allocate resources, how to invest, where to invest, what's going to be the strategy, what's going to be the message. These are the discussions that need to happen nowadays. And ideally, these discussions need to happen at the top of the organization, board, C-suite, and cascade down. I'm not a big believer of bottoms up. I've seen some successful bottoms up activities, like a manager or a director that's passionate. But when this person leaves the organization, everything goes down to zero. So, and there are so many companies that is using the gear. They go first gear, second gear, third gear of a car analogy, and then goes back to first gear. So many companies, they lose insights, learning curve, market share and volume with this stop and go strategy. We need consistent investments over the year.
This is like getting in shape. Just 3 push-ups are not gonna cut it. Okay, so I want to make sure that we give people this information because you have an announcement with a promo code for everyone who is tuning in, and I'm gonna leave this on the screen for quite some time. So tell us what you have very special for us today.
Okay, so we got the book is published by Routledge. And if you go to routledge.com and you put the name of the book, Hispanic Market Power, and use this code AFL03, you can buy the book with a 20% discount. This discount is only valid at routledge.com. You can also buy the book on Amazon. The book is available on Kindle, on paperback and hardcover. And Gaby, I would like to use this final minutes. I know we still have a few minutes, but before I forget, thank you again for this opportunity.
No, my pleasure.
The book is getting a lot of traction. And if you buy the book and you like the book, please help me amplify this message. Post on your social media. Use the hashtag Hispanic Market Power. Recommend to your friends. Leave a recommendation on, if you buy on Amazon, on Amazon.com. Word of mouth is extremely important to get traction, to get this message spread across the country. So thank you for this opportunity.
I always say, I'm an author as well, and I always say when I show my book, here we have your book. If you like it, if you bought it and you like it, give it to your friends. If you bought it and you don't like it, give it to your enemies. But give it to more people.
Hispanic Heritage Month is here. Holiday is coming, so it's a great opportunity. And also, I'm also speaking. If you want to contact me, there's the Instagram here at Hispanic Market Power. There's a website, HispanicMarketPower.com. I'm doing some speaking engagements. I'm speaking at colleges and universities. I'm going to be speaking at University of California, Irvine in October, Emory University, NYU. I spoke at FSU, FIU. So if you are a professor, if you want me to speak, I'll be gladly speaking to your teams. The book is being adopted by several universities as part of the syllabus. So this is another part. We've been talking a lot about the corporate America, but the book is also a reference book for the next generation of marketers, Hispanic or non-Hispanic.
I want to read for you while we have the promo code. There are some of the messages that you have been getting, and maybe just 1 or 2 more questions before we leave. We have some more time. So Yvette Boden, such a great topic to discuss. Manuel Campos, hello, from T-Mobile/Sprint. We were all in the same campaign, so thank you for joining us today. Let me see, Doris Aguirre, reaching out to the Hispanic market is all about business and growth for companies. Politics shouldn't be an issue at all. Great topic, Gaby and Isaac.
Thank you, Doris.
Christian, exciting topic. Happy to hear about this Hispanic market inclusion movement. Bien hecho, Isaac. Then Kat is saying, is this recorded? Yes, Kat, this is recorded, and it's gonna stay in our LinkedIn and other platforms, so you can rewatch it. Then let me see, Celi Castillo, super excited. I have your book and constantly sharing with my peers at my company. That is wonderful. Monica Marquez, very insightful. These are the nuggets we need in our back pocket to strengthen the Latino business case in any conversation. That's what I liked about your book, Isaac. That is not just something that is academic. It has a lot of research and it has a lot of science. It's very solid in the research, but also there's a lot of actionable things that we can take with us wherever we're working, wherever we are, and we can start driving change from our own position. Let me see. We need to be, yes, we need to not only be part of the conversation, but also decision-making process, says Yvette Boden. Gerard Muscus, the total market approach, which we talked about in the beginning, have been definitely hurting the Hispanic ad industry for a long time. Let me see. Gabriela Bello, yes, from a linguistic perspective, as a translator, it is not the same to translate what someone is speaking about as it is to have an in-depth knowledge of the topic. I can help translate in a medical conference, for example, but that doesn't mean I can knowledgeably present on the latest innovations in surgery. This is the difference between what we talked about, reaching versus connecting, and the role that language and culture plays. Let me see. We have here a question from Doris Aguirre. Question. I've noticed this year that several multicultural agencies have lost budgets to their GM counterparts. This is a troubling pattern, and you mentioned that in some cases companies are going backwards when it comes to reaching out to Hispanics. Based on your conversations with C-suite executives, what do they need to finally convince themselves that they need to actually move forward on this and grow the budgets with their multicultural agencies? Great question, Doris.
It is, Doris. Thank you. I think that we need to reframe the discussion from efficiencies and savings to effectiveness. There's going to be a limit on how much you can cut your budgets, but these cuts are not going to drive growth. And what we have on the Hispanic Opportunity is growth, is effectiveness. So we all been there. We have to tighten the belt sometimes. We have to figure out for savings. You know, this is part of the game. I've been a client before, and I've done that several times. However, we cannot forget where the growth is going to be coming from, because in the end of the day, our owners, to the shareholders, and growth is what drives the business in America. So it's effectiveness versus efficiencies. Now, regarding the general market agencies' comments, I have a lot of respect for them, but the reality is that they're always going to be working on total market approaches. And even if you may have a creative dupla that's Latino or a planner that's Latino, in the end of the day, the decisions are going to be made by leaders of these agencies. They are going to force the scale towards, tip the scale forwards, one size fits all, because they are driven by efficiencies, right? And when they have something that, you know, they feel is multicultural, is stereotypical, and you cannot be great for everybody with the same creative idea. It's very rare when this happens. So I feel that if you want to do a message that's more universal, bring your Hispanic agency, your multicultural agency to do your general market ads. Bring them to do a new mainstream America. Forget the labels that you put around agencies and bring just the best agency that understands what's happening in America to actually lead your marketing communications. And I feel that, you know, you're going to have a surprise how efficient and effective you may be.
And I think, Isaac, as we are wrapping up, there's a commonality in everything we spoke. And that is something that I always talk about, which is we have to pioneer, we have to break barriers, we have to be the ones in those rooms having the courage to advocate for change, advocate to what we feel are the best decisions for these organizations, for the company, for our own businesses. So as we come to a closure, my question would be, I'm sure you had to be in many rooms where you were the first one or the only one, and you knew that your opinion was going to be maybe an unpopular one, at least in the beginning. So how do you get your courage to pioneer, and how can we still instill this pioneering spirit in everyone, each one from their own role?
Well, first of all, I have a great support system. I speak sometimes under my name, but as you've seen in the acknowledgement of the book, a lot of people help me. I have great partners here at the agency, for instance, Angela Rodriguez, our head of strategy. I always discuss the opportunities. She has a great planning team. I have friends outside Alma that push me on that direction. And two other things to conclude, Gabi, quickly. If we discuss about authenticity, in the case of artists, in the case of musicians, we have to find our own authentic voice. And I know I'm speaking to the master of finding authentic voice, Gaby Natale, but we have to be true to ourselves. And I'm not saying, what I'm saying, my positions from a business standpoint, because I want to be popular and popular. I'm saying because I want to help companies, and I coming from a place of what I think is the truth based on the data that I have, right? The last thing I want to mention is a quote from a person that's actually mentioned in the book. His name is Reshato Bakuala. Is somebody that I have met many, many years ago when I came to the US with Coca-Cola. He's an author, amazing book, and a speaker. And I quoted him.
You interviewed him. I was there in that event. Yes.
In an event, yeah.
Yes.
And he said something, let me make sure that I don't screw up this. If you don't like change, you're not going to like irrelevance either. Like that's the cost of not accepting change, is being irrelevant from the case of losing share, losing sales, losing brand perceptions. That's the cost of ignoring the demographic and cultural changes that are happening in America. So the choices are very clear: embrace it or become irrelevant over time. And I think that most companies would love to embrace the change and go in this rocket ship towards higher sales. It's going to be a little bit bumpy, as any rocket is, right? But there is a benefit. There is a growing segment passionate about brands and advertising with purchasing power. They are ready to actually define what growth is for the next few years and decades in America.
Absolutely. That gave me chills. If you don't like change, well, you're not going to like irrelevance. Love it. So before we leave, one more time, the promo code is AFL03, and you can get 20% off. This whole conversation is going to stay here. It's being recorded. And of course, make sure you're following on Instagram at Hispanic Market Power. Obrigado, amigo. Thank you so much for being here today. It was a true pleasure, and I'm sure you helped a lot of people today.
Yeah, so thank you for everybody that was tuning in, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Onwards. Take care.